Welcome back to another video in this series where I'm just going to talk about different types of data types and also how to cast them from one data type to another. So there's a couple of different things I want to talk about before I get into that. So the first thing I want to talk about is this hashtag here. So you can see I have a hashtag and then I have something wrote after. So this hashtag means that I can write a comment and it's not going to be included in the code. So a comment is there to help you to understand what your program is doing, but it's also there to help if somebody else was to take over. So if you're working in the real world and you're writing some code and you need someone else to review it or someone else going to work on it, you typically leave comments throughout your code so that person would know what exactly your code is supposed to be doing. So I would encourage always write comments as you're writing your code, and it's something that I'll probably do in here as I'm showing you as we're going through this course. The second thing I just wanted to point out was how I actually structure my variable names. So if you look at first name here, it's 2 syllables, and you'll notice that the first syllable first is in lowercase, and then the second syllable name is uppercase. So again, this is a preference for me, but this is called camel casing, and it's just an easy way for me to know straight off that I'm looking at a variable. If I had a method or a function, for example, and it was first name, I would keep that all lowercase, and then I'd know straight away that that's a method or a function. So it's just little tips and tricks you pick up as you go along. So when you look at your code at first glance, you can see straight away what's what, and it'll help you become quicker and better at programming. So if I just take it through, so I have 4 variables at the top of the page there. So the first one is a string, and I've talked about strings before. They can be a combination of numbers or letters or just characters, and they're all combined together. They're just encapsulated in the 2 bunny ears, or as I like to call them. So you can see Alex is a string, and then I've got 2 numbers. So I've got age, which is 10. So if you were to ask Alex what his age is right now, for example, he'd tell you he's 10, but he's not actually 10 until May. So you can see that I have his real age as 9.79. So the difference in them 2 numbers is a decimal point. So if you don't have a decimal point, it's an integer, and if you do have a decimal point, it's a float or a decimal. And then the last data type that I have then is a Boolean. So a Boolean can either be 2 states. It could either be true or it could either be false, and that's it. So if you see a Boolean, it has 2 states only. It's either going to be true or it's either going to be false. So let's have a look at how we can combine these and how we can change them from one type to the other if we need, and that's called typecasting. So if you look at that first print statement that I have there, so I have print first name comma age. So you might notice in some of the other videos that I used to have print, and I used to separate what I was printing by a plus symbol, and that plus symbol, as we discussed before, is a concatenator, so it joins 2 strings together. Well, in this case, if I was to change that to a plus symbol, for example, let's see what happens. So just notice that I'm trying to print a string, and I'm also trying to print an integer. So if we run this, we need to save it. And on the right hand side, you can see that I get a type error. So it tells me that I can only concatenate strings, not integers to strings. Okay, so there's a couple of ways that I could change this. So the first way I could do is I could replace that concatenator with a comma. And if I run this now, you'll see, of course, it prints Alex and 10. So it's able to distinguish between the 2 of them. It's not trying to join them together. It's printing them as two separate entities for all the word, and I'm able to print it no problem. What if I wanted it to be a string? How would I do that? Well, we could use what's called typecasting. So I could actually change the integer age into a string, and to do that on Python is quite easy. So we type str, which is short for string, and then we put age in brackets, and that's it. So all we're doing here is we're taking age, which is an integer, and we're going to convert that into a string. So let's see if that works. We click run, and you can see it has joined them together. So you can see the difference between when I use the comma and the concatenator. So when I use the comma, it separated them out. So I had Alex and I had 10, and they were separate. There was a space in the middle because they're two separate. One was a string, one was an integer. You can see when I concatenate them together, I'm basically joining them together. So now I have Alex and I have 10, but there's no space. But that's because I didn't tell Python to give me a space, so it's pretty much joined it together. What about if we have the ages here? So we can see one of them is an integer and one of them is a float. So what happens if we multiply these out together? So we could print age multiplied by real age. Okay, so you can see that Python converts it into a float. So if you multiply an integer by a float all the time, it will give you out a float. So it will give you out decimal points unless you tell it not to. So if I wanted that to be an integer, how could I do that? By multiplying the two of them. Of course, I can typecast. So I can type in int, and I can put in brackets what I want to convert to the integer. So in this case, I want to convert age multiplied by real age, and I want the answer to become an integer. So if I run this now, I click OK, you can see that it has given me out an integer. So it's given me out this value of 97. So one very important thing to note with Python is Python always rounds down, never rounds up unless you tell it to. So in normal life, if you had 97.89 and you were asked to round that, you would round that up to 98. If you had 97.45, you would round that down to 97. But Python is not like that. Python always rounds down, and that's important to know, especially when you're doing some calculations, or if you're looking for positions and so on. It's always important to know that Python will always round down and not up the way. So the last variable that we have there is Boolean. As I said, that only has two real positions. It can either be true or false. So I'll go into statements and functions and loops at a later date, but I'll just write a piece of code in here. Okay, and what I have here is I have if love Python print first name plus string age, else print Alex doesn't like coding. So as I said, we won't get too bogged down on the if else yet because we'll go through that later. But essentially what I'm saying here is that if love Python is true, so if that is true, we'll just do whatever's on this line, and if it's not true, we'll do whatever's on this line. So we know that that statement is true, so we should get Alex and 10 just like we did before. So if I run that, and you can see right down at the bottom we get Alex and 10, so we know that's true. What if I was to change it to false? What would you expect to happen now? So you can see it was false. So we had if love Python, so if it was true, it wasn't true, so then we printed Alex doesn't like coding. So again, we'll go into if statements a little bit more detail in the next video, but for now I just wanted to show you the different types of variables that we have and how we can combine them and how we can change them from one to the other. So stay tuned, and next we will be talking about if statements. Thanks a million.